right. So I was being interviewed for a podcast the other day, and we were talking about how when people try to follow a healthy diet, what happens so often is you're great for a certain amount of time, you follow it religiously, and then something happens, like maybe you have an event that you have to go to, or a party, or it's your anniversary, or something really stressful happens, and boom, everything falls apart. So I want to talk today about the one reason I see that most people fall off the wagon and fall off of their healthy eating. My name is Ricki Heller, for those of you who don't know me, and I help people with dietary restrictions learn to love their food and stick with it for the long term so that they can live happy, healthier lives and get on with living their best lives. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how this whole concept of diet, well, three things: diet, my exercise routine, and what I call the marble moment are all connected. So I want to start by telling you a little story, and it has to do with my new exercise routine. So I used to go to the gym religiously, like 6 days a week, and I'm just going to check my page here, just make sure that you guys can see me. I would exercise 6 days a week, go to the gym, but then of course, COVID hit, right? And it made it so much harder, obviously, to do that on a regular basis. So I decided I was going to implement a routine at home. And basically what I do is kind of aerobics to Netflix in the morning. And I do that, I set aside 45 minutes for that. And yesterday I woke up, and at my usual time, I do this in the morning before I take my shower. I woke up at the regular time, and I ended up having like a few of those sort of mini emergencies that just pull you away from what you're doing, right? So I had to deal with a few email emergencies, and then some stuff happened in the house, whatever. By the time I was done, I realized that I wasn't going to have time to do my exercise routine. And so I thought, okay, and I'd already gotten dressed in my exercise clothes. I thought, I'll just go take my shower and start my day. And something happened on the way to the shower. I was kind of struck, and I just had literally a physical pull away from the bathroom. And I thought, you know what? Before I get undressed and get into the shower, I'm going to go exercise for just like the minimal amount of time I have left, and I'll rush through my shower and I'll end up at the same point at the far end of it. So I just did exercise for about 20 minutes, and then I rushed through my shower. I was rushed through my breakfast, but I had done my exercise routine. And I have to tell you, it felt great. By the time I was done, I'd gotten my blood circulating at least a little bit. And yes, it was less than my normal, but I did it. And I think that was the key, because that for me created this light bulb moment where I saw the connection between healthy eating and what had happened in my past when I moved from unhealthy to healthy eating. And now I think of myself as a healthy eater, and that's a permanent change. And how this connected to this whole building of an exercise routine. And so what I want to tell you is what I learned there and the reason why. What is it that kept me going, or kind of allowed me to do that exercise? And so when we're talking about something like a permanent habit like that, or establishing a permanent habit, that's exactly what you're doing when you're trying to change the way you eat, right? And probably many of you are familiar with this, but I'm just going to do like a really quick little recap of the brain science around this, because when we learn something new, or when we establish behaviors, what happens is we kind of lay down tracks in the brain. So the neurons are laying down these electrical tracks, the electrical messages. And I think of it as, if you're walking through, let's say, a path, you have like a shortcut somewhere that as kids, we used to hop off the sidewalk and take a shortcut through a field to get to school, right? And over time, that shortcut gets tamped down over and over and over, and eventually you see this path that leads through the grass. Well, your neurons are working kind of in the same way. Every time you repeat a behavior, or every time you repeat a thought, it lays down a neural pathway, and that path becomes embedded in the brain over time. So if we want to start a new habit, we have to lay down new pathways. And the thing is, it's a concept called pruning. If I, let's say, used to be accustomed to eating 6 sugar donuts a day, I'm going to have a neural pathway for that behavior. If I'm trying to change now and I want to eat kale salad every day, that's going to be a new pathway. But at what point does the kale salad become the new habit and the old one is not valid anymore, right? So that's this concept of pruning in the brain, where the old pathway, it's almost like the grass is growing over again. It's starting to regrow. It's getting back to that sort of untouched state as you're laying down a new path for something else. When it comes to our behaviors, though, there's kind of like a tipping point where if you've been doing something, you're maybe not quite at the point where it's become habitual automatic. So you have to repeat that behavior a certain number of times to create that really well embedded pathway where something just feels natural and just feels like it's part of who you are now, right? So for me, with eating this way that I eat now, I've been doing this for 20 years. It's totally natural for me. And it didn't take 20 years to get there, but every year that I continue to eat this way, it becomes more and more and more embedded in my brain. You can think of it this way when you're trying to create a new habit. So I think of, those old weight balances, those scales where you had, a bowl hanging on either side, and there's kind of like a post and a beam. And depending on how much is on either bowl, they move up and down, right? So if you think about one bowl down on one side filled with marbles and the other one's empty, this is your old habit, the one that's full of marbles. And as each time you repeat the new habit, it's like you took a marble from this bowl and put it in the other side. Every single repetition. So every morning during COVID, while I've been exercising, I've been moving a marble over from the full bowl to the empty bowl. And what happens over time is eventually both those bowls are going to have the same number of marbles. So they're going to be equally weighted. That's the point when the old habit and the new habit have the same power. But all it takes is one marble. And that's what I mean by the marble moment. One more marble where now this side is the heavier side and everything tips over in that favor of that side. And that's what happened with my exercise routine. I had gotten to the point where I had repeated my morning exercise so many times that I didn't feel right unless I did it. It had become a habit. And that was why it was worth it to me to rush through my shower and rush through my breakfast to ensure that I got a little bit of exercise that morning, yesterday morning. And the same thing happens with your eating habits. The more you repeat the healthy eating habits, the more times you give weight to that new neural pathway and you repeat the behavior over and over, eventually that's going to be the habit that feels more natural and that is heavier in terms of the scale of what you choose to do. So it's not that you have to force yourself to eat this way for the rest of your life. What happens over time is just like with me. The first morning I had to exercise at home and I didn't have the kind of machinery that I like. I like doing weight machines, believe it or not. I didn't have any of that stuff here. I was doing a different kind of exercise. Yeah, I had to get up and say, I am going to be sure that I get up and do this today. It was an effort, right? I had to think about it. I had to actually make myself do it. But over time, it's just become a routine, just natural. And now it's weighted more in that favor. It's become a habit. And so for me, that's the thing that feels natural and normal. And if I don't do it, then I miss it and I feel like something is wrong or something is off. Same thing with my eating habits, and the same thing that happens with healthy eating. When you eat a certain way for a certain amount of time, you have those neural pathways embedded in the brain to such an extent that this is now the new way of eating. And so if I had to look at what's the place or the point at which this tends to slip up for people, where they've been on the route towards healthy eating, but then something falters and they go back to eating their old way. Well, if you think about those marbles, right? It's simply a matter of repeating it enough times that we have the weight on the new side of the new habit. And if I had to point out one error or one reason why I think people slip up over the long term, it's because they don't do it for long enough. They don't wait until that marble moment when suddenly everything tips in their favor. And now eating this way is natural. eating this way is the new habit and what they actually prefer to do. Because if somebody said to me now, today, would you like to go and have a Dairy Queen triple dipple blizzard sundae, whatever you want to call it, I would say, the concept sounds good, but if I actually think about eating that, no thanks. It doesn't appeal to me anymore. It's just a natural progression because I have spent so many years now eating this way. And that's not to say I wouldn't like an ice cream treat, but I want it to be one that I know is healthy for my body because I've gotten to the point where I don't want to put food in my body that I know is going to damage my internal organs, my digestive tract, is going to exacerbate my symptoms or any of those things. So next time you're thinking about why it's not working, think about how often you've repeated it and how long you've repeated it. And have you been doing this new behavior long enough to establish a brand new habit that is going to take root and be permanent in your behavior? Have you managed to draw those new neural pathways long enough that they become a permanent pattern in the brain in a way that's embedded there for good? Just like walking over that path over and over and over until it becomes a clear, very strongly defined path. I hope that makes sense, and I hope that's helpful. Let me know if you have any questions, or if there's anything I can answer about this. Feel free to put some comments in below the video here and let me know what you think. Let me know how it's going for you and if there's any other topics you'd love to hear. And I will see you guys next time. I just want to, before I head out, I do want to let you know that I have a free guide called 3 Simple Shifts to Stick With It Now. And these are 3 tips for helping you to stay on your healthy eating path to create that final habit that becomes natural and habitual where you don't have to think about it anymore. So that's at 3 Simple Shifts. Sorry, that's at rickiheller.com//3 simple shifts. So rickiheller.com/3 simple shifts. The number 3, not spelled out, so 3 simple shifts, and you can grab that freebie there. All right, everybody, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll talk to you again soon.